On June 26th of 2024, I posted a video challenging all of you to join me for a Ragtime Quilt-A-Thon. The reveal date was to be July 24th, so we all had just right at a month to work on ragtime quilts. Now, ragtime quilts are great quilts for beginners because they go together pretty quick and easy, and you can quilt them yourself. Well, relatively quick and easy for a quilter. Probably not everyone would agree with that, but these are some of the simpler quilts that quilters make. And my goal was to finish 5 ragtime quilts. Hello everybody, this is Michelle Fox and welcome to The Simple Quilter. In this video, I'm going to share with you how many quilts I made during this quilt-a-thon, as well as some additional tips that I want to be sure to share with you regarding making ragtime quilts. I finished 4 of the 5 quilts. I was really hoping to finish the 5th one, but I simply ran out of time, and I did have fun doing other things, but this was a lot of work to complete the 4 that I did. Now this one in the background is finished and is ready. It's not washed. I'm giving this to one of my friends. She's gifting it to one of her family members, but this quilt, it has been clipped. It has not been washed and dried, and the fray really won't appear until the quilt has been washed, and I'm going to leave that step up to my friend. The tip I would like to share with you for doing these quilts is to be sure you sketch out a diagram, use your EQ8 if you have it, or print off one of these 1/2 inch, can you see that? 1/2 inch graph paper, free printable sheets. You can just type into the search bar 1/2 inch free printable 1/2 inch graph paper and look for the sites that are for students or that come from universities, and then you don't have to download all those things, and you can just print it right there as a PDF. But take the time to sketch it out. Now this 2 color quilt went together really easy, and I've made a lot of ragtime quilts, but this was the easiest to sew together simply because it was alternating squares. If you want the corners to turn out the same colors, like in this quilt, each corner is a black square. If you want each square to turn out black, then you need to use an odd number of rows and an odd number of columns. This is a square quilt. This is 11 squares by 11 squares. So it's 11 rows by 11 columns. So if you want those to turn out the same, you need to be sure that those are odd numbers. Also, if you want the sides to look the same, you have to use an odd number of columns. If you want the top row to look just like the bottom row, you have to use an odd number. Now the next 3 quilts I'm going to show you, I had to take pictures of because they are no longer in my possession. So let's take a look at those quilts. This quilt was given to my nephew, and it was really a challenge for my sister to lay this out in a pattern that was pleasing to her and use the colors of fabric and scraps that we had. Now some of this fabric I did order, but we did try to use a lot of the scraps, a lot of the flannels from my stash. The blues are alternating. In the first row you see it's grays and blues. The second row you see is blues and reds, and then it alternates again with blues and grays, blues and reds. But the overall look turned out great. It is a scrappy quilt, but a controlled scrappy quilt, and one that my sister really liked. The next quilt used creams, golds, greens, and reds. And as you can see, it is again a scrappy quilt, but using that same layout It really turned out to be a very pleasing quilt, and I'm just showing you the back side here of the quilt so you can see the pattern a little bit better. The next picture is a quilt that is predominantly red, although it looks very similar to the first one. This is a predominantly red quilt, and you can see how reds and blues and grays were used for this pattern. And again, I'm just showing you the back of the quilt. I mentioned this in the first video I did for this quilt-a-thon, but be sure you're using the Ragtime snips. Be sure they're sharp, and be sure you're using this. The reason I say to be sure to use these is because these are spring action and they open on their own. In fact, I bought a brand new pair that I showed in another video to clip all these quilts with. And another tip is these do have a lifetime warranty. So if you have a pair that's malfunctioned, be sure you contact the company, because again, these do have a lifetime warranty. When you clip the quilt, be sure you're clipping closely. If you're clipping, say, even a 1/2 inch to 1 inch, that is not close enough. The closer your snips, the better it frays. In the quilts I've made in the past, I realized I did not snip them close enough. But in these quilts, they are snipped very close, and when this is washed, this will fray up beautifully. Another important tip, after you have your quilt snipped, be sure to take it outside and shake it. I had help to shake this quilt several times because this black fabric, the little fabric threads from this quilt, they were everywhere. And I have to say, it's really interesting. There was black fuzz all over my machine. There was black fuzz all over the table and the floor. There was even black fuzz in the sink. And after we shook it, there was black fuzz all over us. I am really considering getting an air purifier for my quilt room. I had no idea how much fuzz comes off of fabric, especially flannel fabric. And I think it's important for us to keep that in mind because I probably inhaled a lot of that black fuzz. Chris O'Neill from Sew the Distance really gave me the idea to consider using the air purifier. She talks about it in one of her videos, and she mentioned that when she sews, her air purifier comes on. So I'm going to be sure to get a air purifier that has a sensor that will come on when it detects impurities in the air. But I really think that's important. It was really incredible how much fuzz was everywhere. Another tip is you can use a sticky roller to help get a lot of those threads off of surfaces and off like the back of the quilt, even after you've washed and dried it, to help with all those little pieces of thread. Now, when you wash your quilt, another important tip is use a color catcher. I don't know why I've never really considered flannels fading, but guess what happened when I added color catchers to the washer? Yes, the color catchers came out blue. Now, when washing a ragtime quilt, be sure you're washing it in a washing machine that has a filter. And if you're washing your quilt at home in your washer, be sure you're checking that filter regularly. Check it before you start washing the quilt. If you can, check it while you're washing the quilt, because those filters can get clogged. Lots of lint and lots of threads of fabric come off of these quilts. So to help control that, remember, you can shake it well before you wash it. You can shake it several times. You could put it in the dryer to fluff it up a little bit and help catch a lot of those threads prior to washing. And you can use a sticky roller over the seams to help get a lot of those threads off. You can also use a sticky roller on the back because there were lots of these little threads everywhere. Now, if you dry your quilt at home, be sure to set a timer. Don't forget to check your lint trap several times. I would recommend every 10 to 15 minutes you set a timer to check that lint trap so that it doesn't get clogged up. Oh yes, I talked about the 4 quilts I had done. Let me show you the quilt I haven't quite finished. I did get some work done on it, but I did not get it completed. Now here is the drawing for this last quilt. Whoops. I still have 55 blocks to add to the quilt. That's 5 rows by, let's see, 5 rows by 11 columns, so I have 55. All of these are cut. All of them have been marked and cut. Some of them are just ready to sew. Like this one, it has the batting in there. They're all ready to sew. So I really don't have a ton left on this quilt. Now this quilt is 11 columns by 12 rows. This is the biggest of all the quilts. But look at some of these beautiful fabrics in this quilt. I only have 5 rows left. I could finish this quilt pretty quickly. Oh yes, and it has to be clipped. And the clipping takes a very long time. So that is what I got finished on these quilts. In the comments below, please tell me how you did during this quilt-a-thon. If you finished a quilt, be sure to go to my Facebook group called the Simple Quilters Community Showcase, and please post pictures of your quilts. Until next time, have fun quilting.